Good evening. Welcome to the first City Council Neighborhoods Subcommittee meeting, and the meeting will begin. Roll call.
Chairman Cirillo,
Here.
Council Leahy, Council Nunn.
Here.
Two present.
Okay, well, what I wanted to begin with is an introduction of the presidents of the various neighborhood groups. I know some or even most of you, but I would like to, be introduced and tell me and Councilor Noon who you are and what neighborhood you're from. So thank you.
Segue into, all right, I'm the PCC chairman, and this Citywide Neighborhood Council has 9 neighborhood groups, and I'm going to step aside and let some of the members of the Citywide Neighborhood Council also announce which groups that they head.
Next female, I guess. Hi, I'm Nancy Judge. I chair the Highlands Neighborhood Association. We actually co-chair. My co-chair is behind me, Dawn Denome. I also sit on the Citywide Neighborhood Council as its treasurer. With that said,
Dawn Denome, and I'm the co-chair, if you will. We're the Highlands Circle Group, which is sort of a segment of the overall Highlands Group.
Hi, I'm Michael Breeder. I represent the Jambra Neighborhood Association. I've been an active board member there for 7 years, and I'm also a member of the Citywide Neighborhood Council. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is John Gear. I'm president of the Belvedere Neighborhood Association. I've been president for about 3 years, and I as well am a member of the Citywide Neighborhood Council. And thank you for having us and allowing us to introduce ourselves tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm Stephen Green, Vice President of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, and which is represented by Carolyn Alphin and Jack Monahan. So, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the residential parking program. And I was wondering if Nick Navin from our parking division could speak a little bit about what the city does and how our process is, so that the neighborhoods can know and understand.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Cirillo. So, my name is Nick Navin. I'm the parking director for the City of Lowell, and the responsibilities of the parking department are to oversee our 5 parking garages that we have downtown, along with our municipal parking lots. In addition to that, we have 1,400 metered spaces in the city. Those metered spaces are primarily located within the downtown. And we also administer a couple neighborhood parking programs that are aimed towards neighborhood residents in about 80 streets of the city, primarily located within Acre and the Highlands and Pawtucketville. There's streets that require a residential parking sticker, which is a vehicle-specific credential that will give you the privileges to park on the street within your neighborhood. And there's also a citywide residential parking program that we administer that's called the Reserved Dwelling Parking Program. And many of you are most likely familiar with that. That's the display of the green and white sign on your home that will reserve one on-street parking space for the residents of that dwelling. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing here. And I think the residential parking programs in particular there has been, during my tenure, you know, some individuals and neighbors reaching out, you know, looking for either like, you know, hours of operation to, you know, expand to include, you know, nights and weekends. Currently, our residential parking ordinances is in effect Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And, you know, oftentimes those are the hours where the residents need on-street parking on the least. Like they need it, you know, in most cases during the nighttime and on the weekends when they're actually home. And, you know, there's also been, especially in neighborhoods where parking is a challenge, like back central and in Centerville, where the streets are very congested and the volume of vehicles are high. There have been some, you know, requests to my office to consider, you know, expanding those programs into that neighborhood to better regulate some of the activity. You know, the aim of our residential parking programs is so that the finite number of on-street spaces can be prioritized to those residents who dutifully register their vehicle under Massachusetts general law and city ordinance. So, you know, that way, those limited number of spaces, they have a better chance of going to, you know, a resident in that neighborhood. So, you know, overall, I think it's been a very successful program that we've had in many of the areas surrounding the college campus. And, you know, it's been instituted successfully for some 30 some odd years. So that is, I think that's why this is on the topic here. So.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. And I just saw a president of one of our neighborhoods come in.
Good evening. I'm sorry I'm a little late. I kind of a busy person. My name's David Coach, and I represent the Back Central Neighborhood Association, and I would love to have be able to put some input in some programs that we may be able to get going across the city. So I'd love for you to pick our brains, if you may. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone have questions with regards to the residential parking or comments? Come on.
Hi, Michael. Good, thanks. Just a quick question as to whether there's any update in the status of the parking garage rates with regards to some future changes.
We are working on another proposal that takes into account the feedback that we received at the last meeting, the Finance Subcommittee meeting, where it was originally introduced, and I anticipate like we'll have a revised proposal in a reasonable amount of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor, when Mike from the Jam Plants neighborhood spoke of the update on the parking, you talking about the Hampton Canal District, Innovative District parking, is that correct?
I think what Michael is referring to is we acknowledge the need and have considered raising our parking rates throughout the entire system downtown.
I see.
They have not been raised since 2003.
Okay.
So I believe it's including the Hamilton Canal District garage and the rest of our facilities as well.
I see. I do have a question around the resident parking program that you spoke of. I mean, per unit, per family would have a plaque, right? That plaque in front of their house. That plaque is reserved how many parking spaces in front of the house?
So the plaque that you referred to, the green and white sign,
That's right.
reserves one parking space on the street centered on that sign. The other residential parking program that the city administers is a street-wide parking program that requires a vehicle-specific credential to be displayed, and that would give you the latitude to park in that neighborhood. And the requirement in order to obtain that credential is you need to furnish the registration of the vehicle that illustrates, you know, it's registered to that address in Lowell.
And that you spoke of the area, the neighborhood as Pawtuckaville, Acre, and the Highland, Lower Highland area where it's near the university.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Hello. We're talking about parking, residential parking program. So yes, and Nick is wonderfully answering questions.
Any more agendas?
No, yeah, this is,
You can take mine.
there you are. We're on the residential parking.
Sorry, go ahead.
Did you have any questions?
Just, can you go over, so I had put this on because a couple of constituents had called about certain neighborhoods that it may or may not work in.
Yeah.
So Back Central wanted to explore it. Is Fayette Street still
I think that's Belvedere, technically.
Belvedere? Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe Lower Belvedere
Yeah.
and Centerville, so.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, in my experience, I've come to understand that the majority of the residents that live within these areas are appreciative of the program. And in my observations, I think that it's, it helps control, some of the quantity of vehicles on the street. Like, you'll see the New Hampshire plates disappear and, some of the commercial vehicles and so on and so forth. And in many cases, it's improved the parking condition in the neighborhoods, so.
Okay, so it's not gonna guarantee you a spot in front of your house, but it's gonna guarantee that you'll get a spot on the street. You'll limit the New Hampshire plates, like you said, the out-of-state plates, because you can't get those.
Yes.
Okay. So what would it take to start experimenting or start trying it out in certain sections of the neighborhood,
So,
city?
I think that I would work with the city manager's office to develop like a plan to, reach out to the neighborhoods and get their sense and perspective on what they feel they need, and, introduce the details of the program and precisely like how it works, and those residents would interface with it, and then potentially, roll out a pilot or trial to see if it is
Sure,
effective.
pilot
Yeah.
program, yeah. Okay. Can I ask the chair, has anybody from the neighborhoods, because I know someone's, Mr. Koch from the back
Yes.
central neighborhood, you guys were interested in this before? Did you want to come
Right.
up to the mic for a second and just, is this something we could talk about again at your neighborhood meeting?
Well, I believe that, we had gone over it, and they were saying that it would probably be better for that particular neighborhood not to have it.
Not to have it, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, I mean, it's not like we're gonna implement it, it's just if we wanted to start the discussion again, but if we're all done in Back Central, then that's
As long as we
fine.
can keep the New Hampshire plates and stuff
Yeah.
out of the neighborhoods, because, there's still people in the Back Central area that have New Hampshire plates and such, if we just look around a little harder and.
Right, I mean, this would be a better way to do that, so that's why maybe we should just have another recap of what we discussed and just see if it does or doesn't work, or,
Right, I mean, because there's people that live up the street, there's 6 tenements and such, and they don't have any parking, so they have to come down onto Mill Street, for instance. and,
Right.
So there's only 4 or 5 houses on Mill Street, so there's plenty of parking there, so, we invite them onto the street.
yeah,
But a lot of people will get arguing over a parking spot, and
sure.
parking's a big issue. In our neighborhood, for instance, there are 3 or 4 unused lots that the city owns. Now, the Back Central neighborhood, over the last 25 years, have had a couple of car condos that the city has given to the neighborhood group to watch over and to take the $1 a day that it earns to be able to say, okay, we're gonna plant some flowers, we're gonna pay a couple of kids a couple of dollars for cleaning things up and such. Why can we not, in the Back Central neighborhood, take those other few lots that we have left before they're developed and turn some of those into car condos? There's one on Rogers Street, for instance, and it is an eyesore. It looks like Jack's Junkyard, okay? And the city does own it. And we've been asking to have that cleaned up now for the last couple of months or so, and it still remains the same way.
Okay,
And right across the street, the neighborhood has 4 lots that they rent out. Now, the people in the neighborhood could have places to park if we could just get things cleaned up a little bit, and, you know, it's gonna take time, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
But all these things are a part of a bigger thing. And the bigger thing is being able to institute some kind of program where we can get the kids working back in the neighborhood. And the dollar a day that we generate can go towards helping these kids out.
Okay.
I mean, we live in a city of 120,000, roughly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay? Across America today, there is 25 million fatherless children, okay? Now, a big part of those children are in the city. We need to be able to reach out to these children and show them that, you know, though we toil all day long at our jobs and we come here and we talk about parking and such, the bottom line is that we're going to do something for them because they are the future. Whether we like it or not, fatherless or not, we have to become the fathers to more than just our own children. I have 8 children of my own, and I've raised a whole lot of other children besides my own children.
Well, maybe this month, I don't know if you guys are meeting this month, or we could meet March or April and
I
start
believe,
talking
I
about
believe it
those
would be,
lots.
I believe it would be April, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so April, we can put that on your agenda and start talking about those lots.
That would be, yes, and to implement some programs in the neighborhood, because we've already done it in the back central neighborhood.
Yeah.
We instituted the garden program a
Right.
few years back. Now there's 28 or 32 of them across the city. So if we can do it with gardening and bring the people our age back out into the parks and such, so we're watching over our children again, right? Though they're not our, though we didn't
Right.
born them, they are still our responsibility.
Yeah, okay,
Then
good.
why not try putting them to work,
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. The next item is on the agenda is the rooming houses. And I would like Eric Slagle to talk about the, some of the rooming houses and the statute that the Massachusetts has, the licensed lodging house statutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. As councilors know, my name is Eric Slagle. I'm the Director of Development Services for the city. That division encompasses, for purposes of this discussion, all the zoning board and planning board administration, the building inspectors, and the sanitary code inspectors. So in Massachusetts, there is a statute, Chapter 140, Sections 22 through 31 of the Mass General Laws, which governs the licensed rooming houses in the city. I provided the councilors with a copy of a list, that's the legal size sheet, a list of all the licensed rooming houses currently in Lowell. Those rooming houses are administered by the License Commission, and Ryan Wynn in the Law Department administers this licensing program. These licensed rooming houses are required to meet certain standards that are laid out in the statute and standards that are laid out in the building code for purposes of fire protection, number of bathrooms, numbers of egresses. They undergo an annual inspection that is required for them to maintain their license in good standing with the city. As you can see on the sheet that I gave you, it lists the dates of the most recent inspections by building inspectors, sanitary code inspectors, and fire prevention from the Lowell Fire Department. So all of these rooming houses currently exist, and they are currently licensed in good standing with the city. The second packet that I handed you is just lays out the specifics of the licensed lodging house statute, and the last page just gives a very brief overview of how we view boarding and lodging houses pursuant to our zoning ordinance. So We do, as is noted in this, do regular inspections of these rooming houses. They are a high priority for both the Staff and Development Services and the Fire Department to make sure that they are up to code. And they also have enhanced requirements for reporting for the police department. They have to maintain a register of the names and identifications of all of their lodgers that they have to provide to the police department at any time. They have to allow the police department in to the lodgings when the police department requests entry. So they have some heightened standards that they're required to meet for purposes of the police department as well. So that kind of is the background of our legal lodging houses. I know that sometimes the concerns that rise to the level of neighborhood concerns and concerns in front of the council are often about not these,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right.
They're about the illegal rooming houses, and that brings up a whole other host of issues when we talk about the operation of rooming or lodging houses without benefit of a license. It's a crime in Massachusetts to do it. You're in violation of the sanitary code, the building code, the fire code if you do it, and we have various methods under those codes for us to enforce the regulations. If and when we make a determination that there is an illegal rooming house, that's a difficult determination to make sometimes, but if we do determine it, it is immediately shut down by city staff, and the property owner is ordered to cease the operation as a rooming house and either obtain a license from the License Commission to operate it legally, or take whatever steps are required to convert it from a rooming house back into a normal, either single family or multifamily, whatever it was before. The key about a rooming house is you're letting out individual rooms as opposed to having just roommates in a single unit. Typically, the evidence we find of that is interior locked doors. So if the bedrooms have deadbolts and the individuals have microwaves or cooking facilities in the bedrooms, those are the typical indications to my staff and the fire department that they're operating as a rooming house instead of a couple of friends renting an apartment together, which is allowed. But operating in a rooming house where you're renting out a room, you have a specific relationship with the landlord where you have a single room that is yours, is what is a violation of the statute. And so we have those that regularly come across our desks, and we do shut those down and refer them to the License Commission if there's any way for them to make themselves legal. Oftentimes there's not, and they're required to convert it back to a single family or multifamily.
Okay, thank you. Deb, come on up. Thank you.
Appreciate you having this meeting tonight. You've come to a few of our neighborhood meetings, so you
Yes,
know
yes.
the dialogue, the discussions that we have. So one of the things I'd like to just start with is that back in February, when Mayor Samaras came, he said that he is going to implement that someone from the city, I thought he said specifically the inspectional services, that someone would come to the neighborhood meetings, and what was going to be accomplished is when they come to the neighborhood meetings, there would be a list of issues that the neighborhoods would have. There would actually be a list that there would be action items on, and there was actually be a written report to the city council. I am not for ward representation, and I feel as though sometimes I can see the merit to it, and I'm hoping that this will probably satisfy a lot of people that think that they want ward representation, that if we had someone from the city at our neighborhood meetings, and from there, get what the issues are and bring them back to the city council so you could know what's going on in each and every neighborhood in real time. such as when Samara said that someone was going to be coming to our meetings because they would have heard, excuse me? What'd you say? Oh. So my train of thought goes this way, is at the last meeting that we just had, a couple of people were pointing out buildings that are now maybe at one time 2 family, now they're 3 families. And at one time that they were 3 families, now they're 4 families. And at our meeting, they talked about the addresses. They gave out the addresses where they knew the infractions were. So what happens at a neighborhood meeting, it'll go into our minutes, but where does it go from there? So if someone from the city actually was there, they could come back, check on those properties and find out, did they get the proper permitting to be like a 4-family? And then that would segue into the problem that we're having with the rooming houses. Last night at our meeting, we had a small group. I think we had 20 people. We usually have like 30 to 40. And of that 20, there were 5 streets that people talked about that they know that rooming houses are going on in their neighborhood. And when we say rooming houses, this is what's going on. Now, the zoning code is our friend. All the neighborhood groups use the zoning codes because that's what makes a neighborhood, a business district, a business district. It defines how we operate as a city. When you look in the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, actually Mayor Ed Kennedy, Councilor Kennedy was with us last night, and we were going through the ordinances. The consensus was that the ordinance that allows these rooming houses to pop up is that it doesn't look like the original ordinance was written correctly, and it was also written so that you could have rooming houses. The way it's written is up to 3 people can live in a house that are not related to the family. Now, in what universe do you know in a residential neighborhood that would be something you would need if you were a residential home to have that right? And we thought, well, maybe in it should have said, as long as it's owner occupied. So what happens right now is you can have a house on Mammoth Road, you don't have to live there, and you can rent out rooms to 3 people that aren't related to you. And that's what's happening on Mammoth Road. It's happening on Magnolia. It's happening on 4th Street. And that's just in Pawtuckaville that we know about, Ellis Ave. And then I know Anne Marie Page was going to come here. That happens in Centerville. We've had people talk about it in Back Central. There isn't a neighborhood that isn't being burdened with it. So that ordinance has to change. So it's the only way that you're going to stop these rooming houses going all over the city. What's happening, though, is by inaction, I don't know how you're going to police them because it's happening right now. And when it talks about 4 or more, now they start calling it a rooming house, and you have to get special permit. I can't tell you how many years and countless hours I spent at the zoning board and the planning board, and I have never been present when someone came to say, could I have a special permit because I want to have a rooming house, yet they're all over. And I would love to get that list. If I could leave here tonight with that list, I would be very, very happy. Thank you. So right now, I'm not sure how it works for you, being the City Council Neighborhood Subcommittee, but we do need somebody that Mayor Samaras says that was going to start sending them to the neighborhoods.
Can I just?
Yes, go ahead.
We do send, Michael Damaris goes to a lot of the meetings, and then there's always there's always a counselor there, so I don't understand what the mayor's talking about.
He's talking about making a defined, when they leave, there is a list of issues that will be addressed, and it's gone through the city council, so there would be a
But that's what
report.
the city council should be doing. We should be going to these meetings, so I would just offer that it's up to the councils to go to the city council meetings,
But, okay,
the
so,
neighborhood meetings, and I think Mike Damaris he goes to as many meetings as he can, so.
yeah. I think what Samaras probably saw, what needs to happen is action items. When somebody leaves a Pawtuckaville Citizen Council meeting like last night, Ed Kennedy did come.
He should
and-
bring those motions forward. Hopefully he would, right?
Okay, but even of all the meetings that you've been so helpful, but it wasn't formalized that when you left there, you said there are 4 addresses, and we want to know what happened. And it really should be a report to the city council so they all know. See, that's the thing.
Well, that's a
It's
good
like-
idea. We should have a
Yes.
report on the meetings. yeah.
Exactly, and because that's the thing about, you don't want to get into ward councilors, but you come to the meeting, but maybe the other 7 didn't, or the other 8 didn't. They don't know what happened at that meeting. And so if you've got this many councilors on a given day, they really don't know what happened at any of the neighborhood meetings. And last night, Ed Kennedy was saying, everything comes from the neighborhoods. All your motions, everything, it's maybe one person said it to you, maybe 3 people said it to you, but it all comes from the neighborhoods. So if there was a report that, every month on, these are the action items that came from the neighborhood meetings, and what happened, all 9 people will know, and then we'll know what the solution is. Because the rooming house issue, we've been griping for how many years now? And you do come to our meetings. But if we're all griping about it for 2 years and we don't have a remedy, now's the time to say, okay, on this report, this is the issue, what's the solution, what are we doing about it, and give it a timetable. So,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Does Mr. Slagle have extra lists? I would just like to say that this Highlands Neighborhood Association, out of its 9 meetings in a year, Michael is probably there 8. The city councilors over the past 2 years have just been excellent, awesome. And as a rule, we don't quite have as many issues as Pawtucketville does as far as parking goes, and rooming houses. But I think that I can speak for myself as a leader, and hopefully Dawn, that if there is an issue, it is and always has been addressed. Michael has always gotten back to us within a short period of time. I think it might be a good idea that whether it's a counselor or Mike, perhaps bring it before the whole city council. And that way, everyone will know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I do have questions to Eric, though. The concern that brought up by Debbie, the chair of the Pawtucketville Neighborhood Associations, those issues that brought up about the 4th Street that have been, turning into illegal rooming house. Have you heard of that issues? And if you do, what have been done on that?
I can't speak to any specific addresses. I do know that if something comes into our office, it's immediately investigated by an inspector and a building inspector and a sanitary code inspector. I think there's a common misperception about the difference between a house that has roommates and a rooming house. Those are not the same thing. Ms. Fortune is right. The zoning ordinance does specifically state that a single family is not more than 3 unrelated persons in the city of Lowell. That's actually very, very stringent. The vast majority of municipalities in the Commonwealth have more than 3. Some have as many as 6 unrelated folks. So Lowell is very stringent about that, if you look at it from a kind of a Commonwealth perspective. But we do investigate each and every one of reports if there are allegations of more than 3 unrelated folks in a building. As I'm sure the council can see, that is a hard thing for us to determine. We don't have the authority to demand, birth certificates or proof of relationship between folks living in a house. And I certainly would not put my inspectors in a position where they are making assumptions based on ethnicity, that folks are not related, that the only thing that will happen is we will get the city in trouble if we do things like that. So it is a challenge for us to make determinations as to degrees of kindred. And so we rely on the other indicia of rooming houses, as I indicated, locked interior doors, separate cooking facilities within the rooms, and the ability of the sanitary code for us to deal with overcrowding. The sanitary code has minimum square footage requirements per occupant. And so those are the tools, the kind of objective tools that we can use. Those are things that we can visually see, or square footage that we can actually measure to make a determination as to whether or not there's a violation, as opposed to, crossing the line into making interpretations or asking questions that my inspectors, quite frankly, are not trained nor technically, I think, appropriate to be asking. So it is a challenge, and we feel for the neighborhoods. We do everything we can when we find these properties, when we're made aware of them, to take whatever steps we can to bring them back into compliance. If it is in fact notifications that there are 2 families that have been switched to 3 families, or 3 families that have been switched to 4 families, we have a standard operating procedure for that. The first thing we require is we require the landlord to come in and pay for our staff to do a legal use determination, where a member of the building inspectors staff will review all of the building permits and all of the legal history of the property and make a determination as to what is the legal use at that property at the time. And if, for instance, the legal use is a 2-family and they have a 3-family, they are ordered to restore that from a 3-family to a 2-family. The council has been through this. We went through this on Frothingham Street just last year, where we ordered the property owner to cease the operation of it as a 3-family, to restore the interior so it wasn't a 3-family any longer, and that's the process that we take. We've gone through it in a number of different times. So however we get the information, whether it's from Mike Damaris, who is very good at interfacing with our department about concerns that come in from the neighborhoods, if it's from the city manager's office, if it's from individual counselors, or directly from the neighborhood groups, we do investigations of each and every property that we can identify, and take whatever steps that we can to try and bring it into compliance with the appropriate codes.
So there is process in terms of turning a 2-family to a 3-family, or a single or 2-family into a rooming house. So when someone's not follow the process, there'll be an inspection or investigation to see whether or not there's a required permit or whatnot, a process is going through. Is that correct?
Right, and there are sometimes processes. In a lot of Pawtucketville, for instance, it's a single-family neighborhood, and you can't have a multifamily. Okay. You can't convert to a higher level multifamily. You can't have a rooming house in those neighborhoods unless it predates our zoning. And so in situations like that, there really is no remedy except for to tell the property owner to restore it back to its legal status, and that's the process.
So pertaining to Pawtucketville, shouldn't be any 2-family or 3-family or a rooming house for that matters, because it's a single family.
Again, the bulk of Pawtucketville is a single-family district. There were pre-existing multifamilies that existed prior to zoning, and so I actually think Deb probably knows more about those properties than I think anybody else does. But we absolutely do investigations on any property that comes to our attention if it's claimed to be in an illegal status.
Thank you.
Eric, I have a question.
Sure.
The call comes into your office and says, we feel that this is a rooming house. Can you please go and look into it? From the point of that call to the end result on your conclusion, as far as whether or not that is a rooming house or they're using the house legally, how long, what is the timeline? How long does that take? Because I feel that, and this is what I gather, is that the residents feel that it's taking a lot of time, and they want to know and have things resolved. So what exactly is the timeline? How long does that take?
Okay. Unfortunately, it all depends. In order for us to make a determination about some operation of the interior of a structure, we have to get into the building to make an inspection. If we are fortunate, we are allowed in by a resident or a landlord within the first week or two after getting a report. We have to do an investigation, we have to find out who to call, we have to make those calls, and we have to try to get in to do an inspection. Once we do an initial inspection, the inspectors will make a preliminary determination as to whether or not there is a violation. If there's a violation, for instance, a two-family that's been converted to a three-family illegally, the next step is to require them to get a legal use determination and to find out what the legal status of the property is. That can take a couple of weeks as well, because that involves, they have to pay for it, it's not free, and then we have to have our staff find time to do the legal research into the archives to make a determination as to the legal status, and then we have to make an order to convert it back to its legal status. So that's a best case scenario. So you're talking about a month and a half, couple of months in a best case scenario. If we don't get let in, that can stretch out to much longer, because then we have to take extra steps in order to try to get into the property. Finding them in violation of some statute, it's usually the requirement to have a certificate of inspection if you're operating a 3-unit property or more, ordering them to allow us in, or they start to get fined. Some landlords ignore us even then, and then we have to make a determination if we want to continue to fine, if we believe that's going to provide us a lever to get the landlord to listen to us, or whether we need to start to take action in housing court to get an administrative search warrant. The threshold for an administrative search warrant can be tricky, because we have to have sufficient evidence to present to the court at the time we go in that there's some violation going on at the property. And as you can see, if we haven't been able to get into the building, it can be tricky for our inspectors to fill out an affidavit swearing that they have enough information that there's an illegality in the use on the property. So we work with the law department in that case. Those cases can get very complicated if the landlord is really digging in their heels and refusing us any access to the building at all. But for instance, just to go back to Frothingham Street, I mean, that was one that came to our attention in late summer, I believe in August of last year. We got an inspection in September, and we were working in October and November with the property owner to convert it back into from a 3-family into a 2-family. So ideally, that's the time we would like to.
So it's 1.5 months on up to.
If we have to go to court, it can take a very long time if we have to fight the landlord in court to get access to the building.
Okay, done.
Okay, so since we've been talking about it for a couple of years, we have to have a heavy-handed ordinance that stops it even getting started. And the conversation that I had previously here and when we had our meeting last night, the conversation went like this: the way that ordinance is written, because the ordinance is written, you can have up to 3 people that are not related to you living in the house. And also, you don't have to be present if you own the house. So the conversation last night at the Pawtuckaville Citizen Council meeting, people talked about houses that they knew and what was going on. Well, there's someone in the city that will buy a house that has 3 to 4 bedrooms, and then he has a lease, and then he rents it to 4 students, and he has the parents sign the lease, and now he's got 4 students in the house. Well, sometimes he has 5 students in the house. So that's the new mode of business going on in the city. So it's up to the city to figure out, if he's saying how difficult it is when the cat's out of the bag, you got to keep the cat in the bag and find a way to have it so streamlined. You have to be owner occupied if you want to have people living in there that are not related to you. And then what kind of burden are you trying to alleviate on somebody by saying, okay, 3 people that are not related to you can live in your house? That means every single house up Lakeview Ave and every single house up Mammoth Road can have up to 3 people live with them that are not related. What are you saying? So that's job number 1. So whoever gets to write it up to make sure that Eric doesn't have to go in and be, the police and how many people are in here. You're right, it doesn't work after the fact. But if it does work, if the ordinance, the minute that that house is bought, because right now I know of 2 sales that are going on in Lowell, that the minute that house closes, that's exactly what that person's gonna do, is turn it into a house where he can rent rooms. Now, the ordinance is already on the books, and I was told, well, he can do that. He does it all over the city. See the disconnect? And the message is out right now that people are out there buying houses up and doing exactly that with the current ordinance that we have and the way that we have to operate. So we got to get harder, tighter, and that's what I'm asking.
Thank you.
Mr. Slagle, so if we work on that ordinance, right, part of the problem was that the assessor's office would go ahead of your office and determine if it's a 2 or 3 family, right? Sometimes. And that was a problem. That has been discussed and has stopped.
Yeah, so there was the assessor's office has to go out and do evaluations of the uses on the property. When they do, at the prior process was at the end of the assessing year, they would send those properties to Development Services if the use had changed from a 2-family to a 3-family or from a 3-family to a 4-family, and we would immediately investigate that.
So that must have changed because that's a problem, right?
Well, yeah. So, it's only a problem in that there's a delay sometimes between the time they find out and the time we find out. So they've changed that. So now instead of waiting until the end of the assessing year to provide us that information, as soon as they make that determination, they send it up to Development
And then
Services.
you guys would inspect to
and we
make
do
sure.
an immediate inspection to make a determination about that.
When we're talking about the frustration that the neighborhoods have, so we've talked about Frothingham Street, and I know you've done a lot of work with that. But again, like that house continues to have 8 to 9 cars a night out there. The neighbors have gone through the burden of filming and documenting, and have documented numerous people in and out of there. So where does someone go from here with that? I mean, it's obviously the problem is still going on. You've kind of done what you could, but there's still a problem there. So if that happens in any neighborhood, what do they do from this point?
Right. Well, based on the determination that my inspectors have made, that house is not any more of a burden onto the parking on the street than the other multifamilies around it.
Well,
I mean,
live
that's
right there, so
my inspections have gone in and done counts.
I mean, if you have, all right, I'm not gonna argue,
I mean,
but when you have construction vehicles blocking the street, I mean, I'm a business owner, but I don't bring 3 or 4 trucks home,
Sure, and my understanding is
think
that
that's
stopped.
wrong.
My inspectors have looked for that since
it still happens. I drive by it every night.
Okay, well, then
So-
that's a
and
violation.
That's what I'm
So
saying. The neighborhoods get frustrated with this, and
Sure,
it's like,
so if that keeps happening, we need to be informed, because that's having those kind of vehicles on the street is a problem. But the fact of the matter is, from our perspective, there's no limit to the amount of cars that someone can have on a piece of property. Unfortunately, the vast majority of properties in Lowell were built at a time when a family would have a single car. Right. And if you're lucky, you would have 1 car, and if you're lucky, you would have one off-street parking space.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, those multifamilies that had 2 off-street parking spaces now have 6 or 7 cars.
Yeah.
Because it's a change in kind of the modes that our society travels on. I mean, I know it's a problem in Back Central, it's a problem in Centerville, it's a problem in the Lower Highlands, where structures that were built without off-street parking facilities and with the expectation that there weren't going to be significant vehicles are now having to support multiple cars per unit. Even studio apartments now are having multiple cars per unit, because every single individual lives there is driving a car, and if they have an
Right.
adult kid, that child is driving a car, and our infrastructure wasn't built to support those number of cars. So that, I think, is
Yeah.
one of the problems that we have.
No, I
There's
know,
also
it's
a-
something we have to look at, because you're right. I mean, you go through a cycle. My kids have all gotten their cars and moved up, and we've gone from 2 cars to 4 cars, back to 3 cars, and.
Right. And I also think that there's a kind of a growing, I'm not speaking to Frothingham specifically,
Right.
but there's a growing number of younger individuals who are moving back home and continuing to live with their parents. And these people have cars, they have lives. It's a kind of an old style of living where you have multi-generational houses, but there's also, some cultural differences with folks who have a multi-generational households, but they have multiple cars. That's a challenge I honestly don't know how to solve. Things like construction vehicles or operating businesses out of your house, let our inspectors know and we'll go out and take a look at it. But there's nothing in any of our zoning ordinances that restricts the number of cars that you can have. If somebody wants to have 3 or 4 cars, and if it's on-street parking, I mean, I think the residential parking program is one way to kind of dovetail these concerns together. If there's a residential parking sticker program, there's a certain requirements that you have to register your car at the property, and that might create some kind of relief for some of if there's on-street parking issues.
Yeah. Okay.
But I do
Thank
believe
you.
that there's some concerns.
Deb?
I realize we don't have as much time left, and it is the neighborhood subcommittee. I appreciate where Eric's coming from, but it's kind of oversimplifying and kind of compartmentalizing some issues. Okay, that's like a blanket statement that, that he's saying. We're talking about specific houses that we know that are doing rooming houses. So, and you can usually tell if you live in a neighborhood that it's become a rooming house because they have more cars. And there are rules about parking. You can't, there are some streets that you can't park on the street. You can't park overnight. There are ordinances for that. That's our Bible. And if that ordinance does not solve the problems he's talking about, then we have to change the ordinances. We can't just keep saying, oh, we can't do it, we can't, it's difficult. We have to find a way to make it not difficult. So that zoning code has to be looked at with a fine pen. Somebody has to sit down and say, how can that be written to solve the problems that he's saying that he can't solve?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is 6:23. I'm sorry. Motion to adjourn?
Sure, yeah.
A motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Working, kid, working. How you been, John? Real busy, kid.
Oh, the rug's coming tomorrow. Great.
Thanks. Yeah. You won't have to cover a rug to paint. Yeah, appreciate it. We've been, since August. Probably noticed the last few meetings. Getting it done.